This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, SabotageTheMovie.com. How the Islamist Marxists and their religious useful idiots are destroying America from within. What a pleasure and honor it is to have with us this evening Brannon House, the producer of Sabotage. Brannon, welcome to the Glazov Gang.
Great to be with you. I've enjoyed your videos for a while. Thank you.
And thank you. And I very much appreciated the first hour of Sabotage. Wow, fantastic job, Brannon. Look, why don't we just get right to it? Tell our audience, introduce to our audience what Sabotage is all about and why you made it.
3 reasons that I made Sabotage. The first one, April 2017, after doing conferences around this country for over 25 years, April 2017 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I had been many, many times, standing room only. I had a friend of mine speaking, his name, Sharia Flags, former Muslim from Iran, police officer. He became a police officer. He also converted to Christianity, became a pastor. And he was speaking with me, and we were talking about ISIS and Islam. And a man from Saudi Arabia came into our conference with a phone and videotaped on Facebook Live his Quran, and then panned the crowd while I was speaking. My off-duty security police officers who were working as security approached him. He admitted he had some weapons. They escorted him out. He sat in his car, made another series of videos that are all over the internet, brandished 5 weapons, including 2 semi-automatic rifles, and what was later described by him online as 1,200 rounds of ammunition, threatened me and Sharam. It took us 12 days to get him charged. He was finally federally charged with a terroristic threat, but it took 12 days. That was event number 1.
Okay, just a sec. Before we go further, Brannon, let's not jump to conclusions. He could have been motivated by unemployment, maybe climate change. Maybe he, just faced some racism or was mentally ill. What do you think?
No, I don't. But because I always tell you that, but these guys, it turns out some of them have PhDs and are doctors and are very wealthy. So that kind of goes right down the tubes. This guy made it very clear. He was very vocal on his Facebook videos. He was angry with us. He said we were holding an anti-Muslim event. We were holding a conference exposing Islam. And he then, by the way, was defended by the local police department, who we premiere in Sabotage. They went on the camera, their spokesperson, and said the man broke no laws. Interesting, because after we turned it into an international story, literally got picked up by the Daily Mail, New York Post, CBS Los Angeles, and on and on. Then after we made fools, I think, of some of the officials in Sioux Falls, I guess they felt pressured to charge him, not to mention there was a state senator, a state representative in the room that night who did not appreciate that the officials were not doing their job, because they actually told the attorney general of the state of South Dakota what laws he had broken, yet the police went on camera, which again is featured in Sabotage the Movie, said the man broke no laws, he was simply practicing his rights. The same police department eventually arrested him.
And Brannon, as you show in your documentary, and as we've been trying to unveil here at the Glazov Gang for many years, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamists and Islamic supremacists, they've really infiltrated and taken over our establishment media and many of our institutions. So this is why we see such major denial going on, correct?
Why that happened in Sioux Falls. Before we got there, they announced that Sharia Flags and I were coming to town. The media stoked the fires. There was an Islamist lady who is an attorney who was speaking, declared that we were involved in hate speech. We hadn't even arrived yet. It was about a week before we were supposed to be there. The media picked it up, stoked the fires. We had the Islamic group out front protesting. And we found out later that their taxes were being paid for by the North American Islamic Trust, a front group for Muslim Brotherhood, we were told. And so they stoked the fires, the media. I had not had this problem over 25 years of doing this until the media got involved and painted us as something we were not. And this man shows up. And so, again, he was finally federally charged. But I'm convinced if we had not had a media background, 250,000 people on my email alert list, a national radio show on terrestrial radio, to put this out there, nothing would have happened to this man. We embarrassed the state of South Dakota, and particularly the officials. Many of the residents of South Dakota are longtime friends and supporters and listeners. They were aghast. They said their state has been completely transformed. Some of them are multiple generations of folks living in South Dakota, said the state has been changed. It's become a dumping ground for the illegal for the illegal Muslims, Islamic groups that have been brought in through the Obama administration and United Nations. So many, many people were aghast at what happened. And so that was event number one. That was April 2017. Event number two occurred in June of 2017. And that was when we set out to expose an interfaith dialogue with a Jew-hating, Holocaust-denying, Hitler-defending, jihadi-preaching imam by the name of Yasser Qadi, who lives right here in our town, Memphis, Tennessee, where we reside. I've been tracking him since 2010. He admits to being mentored by a terrorist. He admits mentoring the underwear bomber, according to FoxNews.com. He has traveled around the globe, and he has been warned. He has had governments tracking him and watching him, according to numerous reports. He is very, very radical. Well, a so-called evangelical author wanted to come to town and do an interfaith dialogue with him. They did. They filmed it. This well-known, or at least well-known in some circles, evangelical author, this useful idiot, as I call him, held this IFD in town and declared that Yasser Qadi is someone he sensed a kindred spirit with, even though he's Muslim Brotherhood, Holocaust denier, Hitler defender, and also has said on audio and video, under jihad, you can take the property and life of the Jew and the Christian. Well, this evangelical said he sensed a kindred spirit with him, that he had learned Islam a lot from this man, that he was his mentor in part on Islam, and that he wanted this jihadi to make a video to teach the church in America, evangelicals, I guess, Christians, the true faith of Islam. Well, we exposed it, played the hour and a half plus IFD, and had comments by a former Muslim, Sharia Flags, and an Egyptian who speaks Arabic, who knows the Quran like the back of his hand, Usama Dakdok. Some of the, quote, useful idiots within the evangelical world came absolutely unglued. Not at the man who did this, but at us, because we dared to call out Islam. When it showed me that the evangelical church, the group you think would be the last people to stand up and fight this, were actually many of them ready to roll over and capitulate to the jihadis. That was event number two. Event number three was in April 2018. I announced we were going to have 5 conferences several months in advance. Before April 2018, I announced these would be 5 conferences that we'd do. They would likely be the last 5 conferences we were going to do after 25 plus years of doing this, other than one we do in the Ozarks every year, because of the numerous threats had occurred in April of 2017 with the gunmen coming into our conference. So I announced these 5 cities, 5 nights, including people like Chris Gobbets, who infiltrated CARE undercover, and other people joining me like Sharia Flags. We were able to carry out 1 of the 5 cities because the Islamic Society of North America, the group Antifa, as well as a Marxist group called the Gamaliel Network, threatened the hotels, and we were shut down in the rest of those 4 hotels. They pulled our contracts. This got picked up by the Daily Caller and many other outlets. So on the drive back home from the Midwest, where 4 out of 5 of our conferences have been shut down, I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to produce a documentary exposing it. So it was a gunman coming into our conference in April 2017. It was the segment of the evangelical Christians in America embracing interfaith dialogue with a Jew-hating, Holocaust-denying, Hitler-defending, jihadi-preaching imam in June of 2017, and then it was April 2018 where our conferences were shut down because American business owners are cowards and kowtowed to communist Antifa and the Islamic groups. And so I said, what we are doing is sabotaging our own country from within, which comes from the Muslim Brotherhood explanatorium written in the 90s and found several years later in the basement of a jihadi in Northern Virginia, where they said, we will get Americans to sabotage their own miserable house by their own hands. We are destroying our own country for the Muslims.
Thank you, Brannon. And you did it for me because I was just about to get to the explanatory memorandum, which you just discussed, and that's also in your documentary. So look, absolutely, this documentary and what you're discussing is hitting it on the nail, because there's a sabotage going on. And something that I've been fascinated with and have studied my whole life is the psychology of people in the free world that are brainwashed and that are intimidated and that end up engaging and are being complicit in their own surrender and in their own suicide. And this is something that we see happening now because the left and Islam have taken control of the boundaries of our discourse. So let's just move here to some of the really frightening things that are happening. Now, as you've said, the Muslim Brotherhood set this out in their explanatory memorandum. They even said that their objective is that they're going to do this by our own hands. And as you're showing, we are doing it by our own hands now. And when I say we, of course not you and I, but many of the people that are in leadership roles in our society. Phil Haney, a truly heroic individual, has also exposed and unveiled something very frightening that is happening in this regard. Could you talk a little bit about him?
Yes, he is featured in this documentary, along with many others, including Chris Gobbets, who infiltrated CARE undercover, which was the basis of the book, Muslim Mafia. Phil Haney, former Department of Homeland Security officer, who wrote See Something, Say Nothing is in it. We also have the father of fallen Navy SEAL, Team 6 member, Aaron Vaughn. Billy Vaughn is in this documentary movie, and many, many others. And again, they can watch the whole first hour for free. It's a 6-hour docu-movie, and they can watch the whole first hour for free at sabotagethemovie.com. And by the way, we only set out to make a 3-hour movie on one DVD. It ended up being 6 hours to tell the whole story on 3 DVDs. And we didn't even raise the price. We just said, no, this is too important to put out there. And Phil Haney is one of the people who's become a very close friend of mine. He was just here in our TV studio in Memphis a few weeks ago. And we're very thankful to have a man like Phil Haney. And Phil is telling us many things that we ought to know. One of them is something also that Claire Lopez of the Center for Security Policy has been alerting us to. And that is things like this, for instance. We now have in America given a contract, a 35-year lease contract to Port Canaveral, Florida's port system. This is where the cargo cars come in that fit on the back of rail cars or semi-trucks or cargo containers. And Claire Lopez and her group alerted us to this, and we began to research this. And this port terminal in Florida, Port Canaveral, Florida, we as our nation have given under the Obama administration a contract for 35 years to a Gulf tanker that is owned in part by a Dr. Jaffer. Dr. Jaffer was the head of the nuclear program for Saddam Hussein. That's exactly right. That guy is now, and his family and his company, controlling a entry port for cargo terminals, Port Canaveral, Florida. We also just, even under the Trump administration, saw go through a 50-year lease of the port in Wilmington, Delaware. What is in these containers that are manufactured in Russia? Go on YouTube or watch my movie, Sabotage The Movie.com, and you'll see the actual replica, the real thing at a fair. The lid lifts up with a command. Up pops 4 silos, which they can shoot cruise missiles out of and use to attack our country. Most concerningly, through an electromagnetic pulse that they would use to detonate a nuclear weapon up above the atmosphere, catch the curvature of the earth, put down our power grid. And experts have warned before Congress that 9 out of 10 Americans will be dead within a year due to disease, starvation, and civil unrest. Now, this first contract went through under the Obama administration. The second one went through in the last few months. Now, the connection to Phil Haney in this documentary is Phil said, oh, Brannon, it gets worse. Go look at all these Citgo gas stations up and down the eastern seaboard. And Citgo is owned by Venezuela. They are in bad shape financially, as we know. Massive, massive inflation. People eating out of dumpsters. The middle class eating out of dumpsters. But yet also, according to the CIA director, Pompeo, when he was CIA director, told Fox News' Chris Wallace, as we see in the documentary, that in Venezuela, we have Iran, Russia, Cuba, and Hezbollah. And what is going on? Their economy is collapsing, has collapsed. They needed some money to prop up their oil industry, and they sold half of their oil business, Citgo, to Russia. Russia now owns or controls 50% of the oil terminals up and down our eastern seaboard, 48 of them, and 3 oil refineries. This Club K car is manufactured in Russia. The exporter of it is 100% Russian owned. They now, according to Phil Haney, as we document in our movie, have the reason, Russia, to work with Dr. Jaffer, who they're already in a business relationship with, to bring the Club K car into our port in Port Canaveral or Wilmington, Delaware, and now under the guise of these 48 oil terminals that Russia owns 50% of, Citgo, they can now drop down these cargo containers that have these missiles in them. We also have the documentation translated from the Russian defense manuals boasting of carrying out a strike on America like this, including a Pearl Harbor 2.0. This is Muslim Brotherhood. This is the kind of thing that Phil Haney and others tried to warn about. and were threatened with prosecution and actually grand juries against them. This, again, is how we're sabotaging our own nation. This is not conspiracy. It is not stretching the facts. You watch sabotagethemovie.com the first hour for free, you'll see this is all highly documented.
Thank you, Brannon. Just really scary stuff. And look, we know that especially under the Obama administration, all of this horrifying infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood into our White House, into our institutions, was overseen and facilitated by the administration itself. Donald Trump, I think, is a providential godsend. He is in their way. He has some good people around him, but he's got a big battle to fight. So look, let's go back a little bit now in terms of the things you were discussing under Obama. Let's start with this. Just really, really heart-wrenching stuff here. Dead U.S. soldiers coming back in coffins from Afghanistan. And some of those coffins were actually wrapped in Sharia-style flags?
Yes. This was told from our platform at our conference with a live audience. And by the way, this is filmed with multiple cameras, a swinging boom. It goes from our conference with about 1,000 people in the Ozarks with a live audience and all of these men on the platform telling their stories and being asked questions by me, to coming back into our TV studio where we anchor some of it. And we have loaded this thing up with B-roll footage. We've also loaded it up with screenshots documenting what's being said. If a speaker says something, I show you either the B-roll footage, the actual footage of the person that they're reporting on, or I show you the screenshot to document and prove that what they're saying is actually the fact. This is loaded with documentation. One of the things that was discussed at our conference was by Billy Vaughn, whose son Aaron Vaughn was one of the 30 Navy SEALs on a Chinook helicopter that was shot down in Afghanistan in 2011 in the Obama administration era. Why? Because our government was embedding Afghan soldiers with our servicemen. The jihadis and the Afghans had eyes on everything, including the intel. They had the ability to squash missions by our special forces or to approve them. They would embed their Afghans with it. And so our guys were vulnerable. The enemy would know they were coming, when they were coming, and our government would not allow that Chinook helicopter going into a hot landing zone to lay down ground fire. And as a result, those 30 Americans, that included 17 Navy SEALs, were shot down and they were killed, including Aaron Vaughn, whose father, Billy Vaughn, is now a close friend of our family, and this organization is on this video. When their bodies were brought from the crash site back to the base, they, as you will see in the video, in the movie, we were able to obtain, shockingly, we were able to obtain the video footage of an imam, quote, praying over the bodies of these fallen American heroes that some cases were covered in jihadi flags out of political correctness. He was allowed to pray over them, and when it was translated by 3 separate groups, including 2 congressional offices, they all came back independently with the same translation, as you will see on the screen in the movie. He was praying a curse over them, declaring that Allah was winning, they were the victors, the Americans were losing, and they were hell fodder for hell. That is what has been going on with our military, and Billy Vaughn will tell you much of the leadership has not changed even under the Obama administration. And the military was upset with Billy Vaughn and his wife, Karen, for putting out this information, making this available to the American people, and they wanted to stop he and his wife from attending some of the memorial services for their own son. This is our government doing this to the families of fallen heroes. Again, this is in sabotage. Billy Vaughn speaking for himself, Phil Haney speaking for himself. We have video footage that has never been shown on national television that must get out there. In fact, we produced this onto a DVD, and one reason why is we don't want anybody in the deep state or any of these groups sabotaging our movie, as some have actually tried. I won't get into all that now, but we want the old-fashioned hard DVDs out there so the American people can preserve it and pass it around and make sure that it is never, ever forgotten.
Thank you, Brannon. And just when you said it's still happening, you said Obama. Now, we know it was happening under Obama. Did you mean that this is also still continuing today under the Trump administration?
What I meant is that Billy Vaughn says that the generals are conducting the wars in much the same way. They have loosened up some things. Some of the rules of engagements have been loosened up a little bit, but many of the same compromised generals are still running the show in the Pentagon, according to Billy Vaughn and other experts. So we have not seen the transformation we need any more than we have in the deep state. From the Justice Department to the FBI and many of these other CIA, many of these agencies are still filled with Obama bureaucrats doing it the wrong way. We're not seeing a change quick enough into what? 2 years plus years of being in the Trump administration.
Right. Brannon, well, look, it's quite a frightening phenomenon. Like I said, what I've dedicated my studies to is studying the mentality and psychology of a population under siege, which Kenneth Levin wrote about in the Oslo Syndrome. And we know that there's a Stockholm Syndrome that's going on in the West and in the United States, is you're showing and revealing. And the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamic supremacists are just infiltrating every branch of our culture and of our society. And now here's what's even so scary is you're showing and what you've talked about. Yes, the military, the media, our cultural discourse, etc. But you would think that in the church, you would think that people kind of get the battle between good and evil and understand what's going on. But you're showing that this interfaith dialogue that the Brotherhood engages in, they're very successful at it, and that this poison is also infiltrating the church, correct?
Absolutely. In fact, I've written another book that just came out about a week before the movie Sabotage came out. Both of these have come out in the last couple of weeks. This is called Marxianity, and it's subtitled How the Evangelical Deep State and Their Useful Idiots Are Merging Marxism and Christianity Through Social Justice, White Privilege, Cultural Marxism, Illegal Immigration, Interfaith Dialogue, and more. I have been covering the state of evangelicalism in America for over 28 years. And I'm seeing people and groups and organizations do things and say things and work with people and promote initiatives and conferences and ideas with social justice, change agents, cultural Marxists. I never thought these people would be involved with. Never. We've got a serious problem. And as the Center for Security Policy, which is not an evangelical or Christian organization, is a secular think tank, put out a 35-page report 2 weeks ago, 1st of November, declaring that interfaith dialogue is a great threat to our national security, and the number one target is evangelical Christians. So the point their report is making is not from a religious standpoint, but a national security standpoint. And I make the same point in the book, Marxianity, and in the movie, Sabotage. They are going after the evangelical church because they know that the last standing group that they have to take over after they've already taken over the education, our colleges, our elementary schools, secondary schools, they've taken over the media, they've taken over the military, they've turned the military into a social experiment. I mean, we have so much we can say about that. They've taken over so much of the institutions of our country. If they can take over the churches in America, and particularly the conservative branch of Christianity known as evangelicalism, it's over. And that's what even the Center for Security Policy said. Evangelicals are the prime target. Why? That's the group that, if any group would understand the worldview war, Marxism, Islam, postmodernism, whatever the major 6 dominant worldviews are, as I list in my book, if any group should understand this and counter it, surely it'll be the evangelical Christians, right? Well, they're being taken over. They're buying into interfaith dialogue. They're buying into social justice that is really socialism. They're buying into the communist lie of white privilege. They're buying into the idea that we need to welcome all the immigrants, even if they're unvetted, because this is what Jesus would want us to do. And they're being taken over by liberal progressive foundations like George Soros's group, Open Society, that is now funding groups like the Evangelical Immigration Table. This, again, is specifically called the Evangelical Immigration Table. And they're trying to convince they have the biggest leaders of Protestant denominations, pro-family leaders, that Jesus would be all about welcoming the stranger in a foreign land. And I was a stranger and you welcomed me, using Leviticus 19 and Matthew 24 out of context to convince so-called evangelicals today that if you don't buy into socialism and communism and amnesty for illegals, you're not a legitimate Christian. And one of the people helping is Jim Wallace, who's been involved in pretty much every communist revolution in South America for the last 40 years, who openly declares Christians as demons, working for forces of darkness. And now in the last few days, we have audio from the 1st of November at the World Parliament of Religions, which is a collection of leaders from around the globe under the United Nations. These are not just religious leaders. These are government leaders from around the globe got together in Canada at the World Parliament of Religions, and Jim Wallace, among others, spoke, and he declared that people in America who declare themselves to be Christians, who voted for Trump, who are not for bringing all these immigrants from Islamic nations here, they are now the demons that we're battling and the forces of darkness. And now they declared that America is filled with not just white supremacy, but Christian supremacy. So now if you're a capitalist and a Christian or a conservative, you are a racist. And this is what they do. They create a victim coalition. They grab together people and they create offenses. And then they say, who are the victims? And they list all the victims, the poor, the immigrants, the feminists, whoever. And who are the ones doing the victimizing them? Capitalists, Christians, conservatives, males, white men particularly. And this is the strategy of the Frankfurt School, the cultural Marxists who came here to America in 1933, set it all up, wrote about it extensively in their papers and books. This is not conspiracy. They openly bragged about it. Created a coalition of victims, and now all the problems we see in America, they're going to blame it on capitalists, conservatives, Christians, and white men.
Thank you, Brannon, and you are spelling it all out brilliantly and very, very frighteningly. But we have to know this. Everything that you're saying, this is exactly how totalitarian terrorist movements work, by painting themselves as the victims and all these groundless accusations against the real victims, etc. All good things must come to an end, Brannon, and we are running out of time. Our viewers need to get Sabotage. I think that the background behind you tells our viewers what to do. They go to sabotagethemovie.com, correct?
Correct. And if they want to get the book, Marxianity, they just go to Marxianity.com. Just Marxianity.com, which is the mixture of Marxism with Christianity. And they're going to be shocked to find out that many of their pastors or priests or other people are within mainstream so-called conservative evangelicalism are embracing it. And I'll give you a little hint what they're doing. They're turning your churches into social service centers. Why? Because as I uncover in the book, billions and billions of dollars that these, quote, churches now can make if they become social service distributors for state, local, and federal governments. I spell it out. They're not going to have to just persecute the church. They're going to purchase the church. In other words, do what we tell you. We will make you, pastor, quote, pastor, and all your church leaders very wealthy people.
Now, Brannon, so people they need to go to sabotagethemovie.com. They can purchase Marxianity, your book, on there. They can watch the first hour of Sabotage, but then in order to watch all 6 parts, they can order the DVDs on there, correct?
That's correct. It's sabotagethemovie.com. And if they want to order the book, Marxianity, they go to Marxianity.com.
And right now it's in 6 parts. 1 hour can be watched online. The other 5 parts ordered by DVD, correct?
Right. We figure if they watch the first hour, they're going to be they're going to want to order the other 5. They're going to get all 6 hours because, again, we don't want you buying a pig in a poke. You watch the first hour, and that's exactly what the remaining 5 hours are like. I mean, on the edge of your seat. Just go watch the first hour. It is on the edge of your seat drama. It's like something out of a Tom Clancy movie, but the problem is this is really happening. It's not fiction.
Right. Well, I can testify. I watched the first hour. It's brilliantly done. And it's heart-wrenching and frightening, and also an on-the-edge-of-your-seat thriller. Absolutely. Brannon House, thank you so much for making this documentary, Sabotage, for writing your book, Marxianity, for everything that you're doing to try to take the blinds off of the people in the West who are really following what the Muslim Brotherhood predicted, that they're going to destroy us from within by our own hands. Final words of wisdom to you?
It's an information operation. I'm more convinced than ever. It's an information operation. It's a propaganda war. It's a brainwashing concept. We've been lied to over and over. As I detail in the book and in the movie, Sabotage and Marxianity, even in the 1940s, the young men in our schools did not learn enough about American history and our way of life, so that by the 1950s, when they were prisoners of war in the Korean War, a huge chunk of them actually without torture or without torture or drugs converted to communism. They turned on America. Others gave up, pulled the sheets over their head, and were dead within a few days. Our government couldn't figure it out, conducted a study, as I reveal in the book Marxianity and in the movie. What they found out, the men of the 1950s who were POWs in the Korean War did not learn enough about America and American history to defend our way of life, even in the 1940s. If it was that bad, Jamie, in the 1940s, what do you think it's like today?
Absolutely. Brannon House, thank you so much for everything that you do. We hope you all the success in the world. Good luck with these documentaries. We hope everybody in America and in the West and in the world will watch it.
Thank you for helping me get out the word.
Thank you, Brannon, so much. We hope we'll see you back on the Glazov Gang.
Love to. Anytime you invite me, and I'm going to put this out to the 250,000 people on our email alert list.
Okay, now you're talking. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our audience of the Glazov Gang that are watching right now, don't do anything else. Go to sabotagethemovie.com. Watch Sabotage, get the movie, and order the book Marxianity. And we'll see you soon on the Glazov Gang. Good night.